just special ed? Good evening. Welcome to the ISD 191 Legislative Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 25th, 2022. Joining me this evening is Director Anna Werb, Superintendent Teresa Battle, and Amy, I've forgotten your job title.
Director of Student Support Services.
Director of Student Support Services, Amy Piotrowski. So, welcome. And tonight on our agenda is to talk about the legislative platform for the district for the coming year, starting by reviewing the 2022 platform. So I think what we'll do is I'll just go through the specific items that were in this year's platform, and then we can just discuss as we are able thoughts on, I guess, keeping them in the next platform, and if there are other items that we would want to consider adding to the platform, which is currently on the board agenda for an upcoming meeting, either the next meeting or the meeting after that. So we'll be talking about it, I think, in a workshop at one of our upcoming meetings. So
Director, I do have one change that I noticed on the current one.
Okay, great.
The first one, it says reduce the cross-subsidy for special education and English learning.
Right.
We need the word learner.
Learner, okay.
All right.
We'll make sure to that. If it makes it into the 2023 platform, we'll want to make sure.
learning.
English language learners,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
English and-
I think it's how we, because it's usually.
So I'll get the
ELL.
correct term from the funding, but I think we need to
Think you're right.
revise that. Okay.
Okay. So that's the first. That was the first item on this year's platform. We also had provide a legislative exemption to allow local control of property sale proceeds. Remove the 15-day residency requirement for students enrolled in online schools. Increase safe schools funding to expand mental health supports. Provide targeted funding to increase diversity among teachers and permanently fund free school meals. So those were the items on the 2022 platform. And what we are here to discuss is moving forward as we begin to work on the 2023 platform. What are our initial thoughts on those items that we included this year? Any no-brainers for keeping or removing?
So, I guess I have a question about the funds for sale of property because of the fact,
Yep.
the exemption, being that we didn't get that into the legislature. Now, is that even possible to have it go before the legislature again this coming year? Okay,
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's, yes.
all right.
So
Because
that
the
one-
sale hasn't closed, it would still apply to the Metcalf sale, presumably. That
So you keep that one?
Okay, so yes,
what you-
yes,
I think we would definitely
yes, absolutely.
keep the legislative exemption. To my knowledge, and I probably should have checked this before the meeting and didn't, but to my knowledge, none of the things that were on this year's platform got passed by the legislature. So I realized that's probably a good starting point, just to acknowledge that the things that we had on here and that we shared with our legislative, none of those things. So we could potentially copy and paste if
And
we
the
chose.
last
but-
one, you remember, that was the U.S. Congress,
Right.
the permanently funded.
Yes, which they did
free
not
school
do.
meals, which they didn't
And that
do
was the
either.
one I was going to say we definitely probably there's probably not much point in leaving it on for this year. The permanently fund free school meals. I don't think that's going to happen. If it didn't happen this year,
Yeah.
I don't see it happening anytime soon, and I think we have other needs.
Take it off? Okay.
Go
ahead.
Something on that?
Of course.
Yes.
One of the big changes that happened this year, and that line was the automatic certification of families through Medicaid, I believe, through the state
Right.
health insurance. Whether or not the committee would want to include that, but that might be a different approach to the same sort of result where students would have access to, families wouldn't be burdened by having to pay for school meals because they would automatically be certified without even having to fill out an application for educational benefits. It's
And I
been a
know that
huge
was
help this
one
year.
of the things MSBA talked about wanting last year also, is tying those things together, so.
Yeah, it's,
that-
from a administrative standpoint, it's huge because we don't have to worry so much about trying to get everybody to fill out an application
Right.
for educational benefit. All these people who benefit from it don't have to worry about doing that either. And also, we continue to have families, we show the correct percentage or closer to correct percentage of families who qualify for free and reduced meals, which means that our compensatory aid more
Right.
closely matches our need.
Yeah.
What's the proverbial Venn diagram of the overlap of people who would qualify for, is it for Medicaid and people who would qualify for free and reduced? Is it the same people essentially? Or what I wouldn't want to do is, if that happened, how do we catch the people who maybe don't qualify for Medicaid but would still qualify for?
So what
Free
we
and
learned
reduced.
from food and nutrition with that change, it significantly increased our number
Okay.
of eligible families.
Well,
So
that's-
we'd have to
that's good.
find out about your question.
Yeah, the exact percentages, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, the primary benefit is just that they're automatically certified rather
Sure.
than having to fill anything
I
out.
just would want to make sure that if it's possible that a family that currently qualifies would no longer qualify under that model,
Oh,
then
no, nope, definitely not.
that's okay. That's what I was trying to
Yeah.
It's been an
ask.
increase.
Yep, yep.
More
More
families.
people qualify.
Okay.
More people qualified.
And,
Because some people just don't submit the form.
Right.
But so with the identification through the other government system, they qualified. They had submitted the information for that.
yep. And we would still definitely continue the campaigns that we've done, especially this year's been a very concerted campaign about trying to encourage people to still fill out the application for educational benefits, so.
And I'll go back to, after you finish, I can go back to when I have the exact language that we're to use.
Okay.
That's just the one thing I wanted to mention, if that was something the committee wanted to include. And the reason that it would need to be included is that, my understanding is that this year is a pilot year for that model, where people automatically are certified if they are in the Medicaid program, and that may or may not continue.
So
In
it
the
would be to continue using Medicaid
I believe it's Medicaid, yeah.
eligibility for certifying.
Automatic certification.
Automatic certification.
This would be
for
something that would have to, it's a congressional
free
effort,
school
not a
meals.
state effort. So we'd have to,
Yeah, even
this
though
would be
it's a-
like our national issue.
Yeah,
Yep.
I believe that's right.
So,
Although
for you to consider.
fully funding special education would also be a national issue, since a big part of the reason why it's not fully funded is because of the federal government. So
Think, add that.
I think we should add it,
Okay, you
at
can-
least for the purpose of discussing with the
Or
full
get it
board.
from each.
Yes, I think that's a great suggestion.
Okay, and I'll get more accurate, or, exact language from Julie Cronabetter, Director of Food Services, to get that.
Medicaid eligibility.
And I think that also gets at the idea behind the permanently fund the free school meals last year, is we want to make sure that we're not losing people who really need it, and trying to make it as easy as possible for them to be able to access what they need.
Yeah, and there's so many families that, if they don't get to, or for whatever reason, don't fill out the application right away, then until they're certified, they are responsible for those payments. So it's not like it goes retroactive to the beginning of the school year, and we
Right.
end up getting this big balance. And if we can avoid that by just automatically certifying them right off the beginning, that's a really big benefit.
Exactly. Great.
So I looked at the other platforms that were in the materials for tonight. MASA, it's Thai English Learner Funding.
Okay,
So I suggest reduce the cross-subsidy for special education and English learner funding.
works for me. So the next one that we haven't talked about yet is removing the 15-day residency requirement for students enrolled in online schools. That's the one where if they leave Minnesota for, I think it's more than 15 consecutive days, then they would be unenrolled from their school. And with us having a virtual academy now, we felt, and I would say probably still feel, that we would want that law to be changed. It was probably created at a time long before virtual schools were created and
They're kind of
should be updated to reflect our modern world.
It's just a school within our portfolio. It's not.
Yes, exactly, exactly. The next one is increase, I'm a little worried that this is going to be too long because I have at least one other one that I want to suggest we at least talk about adding, but let's get through the others first.
Smaller font.
Smaller font, just really small this year. Increase
paper.
safe schools funding to expand mental health supports. I don't know why we wouldn't want to include that, given the importance of the board has talked about and that we hear all the time about the importance of mental health services that we're providing to our students. So I think anything we can do to enhance that funding would be something we would want to consider.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm talking
Okay.
all the time, so. And the next one, again, given our memorandum of understanding and the workshop we just had, provide targeted funding to increase diversity among teachers, feels to me like something we would want to continue to have in our legislative platform. Unless anyone disagrees. I'm going to take a break from talking for a moment, Anna, and ask if you have any thoughts on other things that you would like us to consider
So
adding
are
this
we,
year.
okay, so I'm looking at the legislative platform outline from Association of the Metropolitan School Districts.
Yep.
Sorry.
It's okay. Remember it.
Which, I mean, pretty much kind of aligns. So ours was, so the stabilized funding. Does that fit into anything in our eliminate Chevron special education English?
Not specifically, and that's a
But-
good point,
yeah.
because this year's platform was created in a non-funding
Funding.
year,
Okay,
and this coming year is a funding year. And the last time I checked, there was still a pretty significant state budget surplus. They elected not to do anything about last spring, leaving it for the next legislature. So, yes, we should probably have something in there about a specific budget. I think in the past, we've asked for a certain percentage even.
Yeah,
To the funding
before,
formula.
previously,
Yeah,
before it was
yeah.
2%,
I
add
think it was,
2%.
I think one year it was 5%.
I think we asked for 5 when we got to 1 year,
well,
right?
based
But-
on, inflation,
Well, that was my next bit, yeah.
yeah, I mean, come on, can you give us something here? I mean, we're suffering too in the education field. I just can't
What?
believe that they will not look at that formula.
One of the I agree. One of the things that was in one of the, I don't know if it was the MASA or AMSD, might have been in all of them, was tying future increases to inflation to address that, because it hasn't been. So every 2 years, the legislature decides what the funding formula increase is for the next 2 years, which is how it's fallen so far behind. Even years where we had extremely low inflation, the funding formula has not kept up with
Yeah,
rising
AMSD
costs.
says link the basic formula and local optional revenue to inflation.
Yes,
We
exactly.
how they
need
phrased
somebody
it.
to advocate for that because I just
Very important.
can't, I just don't understand why nobody looks at this. It's just, it's depressing. I'm sorry. I mean, it's like people just are like, we don't care about kids. Basically, we care about everything else but kids.
You know, I've said it before, you fund what you value. We did our budget process.
Right. Yep. And in their defense, there are, so many priorities that they have pulling at them that, we're one of many priorities that the legislature has.
I get
But-
that, but how could you just say,
Higher ed and
Well, roads
hospitals,
and
roads, it's just a difficult job.
building it is very difficult,
Just like you had to make some choices
right?
as a board.
But we want them to make more choices in our favor, definitely.
I think what it is because the Minnesota Constitution, on one thing it says to do is the fund, public education. It doesn't say keep the roads going.
Right.
yeah,
So that's the difference. Our Constitution actually calls for it.
well, and when you look at like
Being against roads, of course.
We all need them, in order to get to
all
school, we
it.
need good
all
roads.
know with the winter.
right now, you could make a case for the fact of how important it is with all the setbacks from COVID. And they are now, all the things in the news are saying, oh, we've had the most significant decrease in reading and however long, and numbers have fallen, everybody, it's basically all these, reports saying that our kids are falling behind in math and reading, and yet you still don't want to invest in children learning.
And so a statistic I found out today during the 9/17 retreat, we're now 30th in the nation for funding.
30th? Is that a per pupil form? Is that how they calculate that?
2009, I think we were 17th, and now we're down to 30th. I think this U.S. News and World Report. So we discussed that at our retreat, and so how could we come together?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's discouraging.
How do we seek out and find somebody? I mean, I know we have our constituents here in our district, that we try and gain support from, but if there's somebody else that they can connect with, I mean, I don't know, is it Angie? I mean, having her go to, I know this is like, it starts locally, but it also needs to go federally.
Well, and I think that's in part the work that this committee can do, right, is invite the state legislators. Obviously, there's elections right now, so you don't know who they'll be next year necessarily, but invite them and make sure they hear what your priorities are and what the district's priorities and needs are. And certainly the committee and board members can encourage residents to contact their legislators as well. That's at least a way to try to get people to be a little more active.
Right, and that's actually part of why we're having this conversation now, is to get a head start, because in prior years, we didn't really finish the platform until February or March, and by then the session is halfway done. So we're wanting to get it done before the start of the new session, so that then when we invite the legislators to our meetings in December, I think it's December, January,
And we have our invitation.
right
ready.
before the session begins, that's our opportunity to advocate, at least to the legislators that directly represent the district.
Right.
Did you have another question about that AMSD?
I don't think so. Well, they have some interesting things under this close opportunity gaps and spur innovation.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go also.
Especially this, allow locally elected school boards to establish the school calendar that best meets the needs of their students, staff, and community.
I was curious what that one was even about, because we do set our calendar. I mean, there are parameters that we have
Yeah.
to follow, but,
So there are several districts that prefer not to jump through the hoop, that you can't start before Labor Day
Oh, that's what
unless you
they're referring
have a
to.
certain amount of construction costs. So they tell us that we can't start before Labor Day.
Right.
And they have exceptions, and so some member districts of AMSD don't believe that's a hoop.
I
The
see.
state should be asking districts to jump through. We set our calendar. That's a local control issue.
Right.
But as you know, they're lobbyists and so Anna, that's where that
I'd
one.
hate to,
Okay.
I'd hate for the state fair to close a week early because everybody's back in school already. One of the things I wanted to bring up also in that same section
Yeah,
is actually the first bullet point around making, or at least to discuss, make funding for voluntary pre-K program permanent and increase access to school-based pre-kindergarten programs as a way to potentially close some of these gaps and provide more opportunities for our youngest learners. So that was one that caught my eye.
What you think, Anna?
yeah.
You had it?
I mean, do we, I guess I'd
Where
like
was
to
that under
define,
again, Scott?
It was in the AMSD attachment under close opportunity gaps and spur innovation. It's the first bullet point.
Opportunity gaps.
so,
I'm not seeing that
I'm
section.
not seeing that either. Okay, we'll write it down.
Huh.
Read it again.
Legislative platform outline 2023 is the attachment.
Oh, I have the 2022 open. I'm
Oh, sorry, this is the draft for 2020,
Right.
2023.
I was wondering.
That would make a difference.
Thank you. Make funding for the voluntary pre-K program permanent, increase access to school-based pre-kindergarten.
so is it not, I guess, is it not currently permanent?
I think it has to get authorized every year
Every year.
by the
Oh,
legislature
okay.
or every 2 years.
Right.
And then it's, if I'm understanding it right, and Dr. Battle definitely correct me if your understanding is different, but basically they make a certain number of seats available across the state and
And
people
I
have to
think you
apply
apply by
to get them.
district.
Yes.
Yeah, so you basically
Oh.
we get a
To
grant.
get a certain number of
to get a
seats
certain number of seats.
Okay.
that are paid by the, then I think others, then it's fee-based for the other students.
Yeah, so then the other programs are fee-based, and I think our district has made an effort to make sure that there's at least one class available for every school, elementary school, even if some of that funding comes out of our general fund rather than the grant, to make sure it's equitable access.
Okay.
I believe over the last couple of years as well, there have been a handful of school districts, because enrollment has gone down or because people were not going in person because of the pandemic, a handful of, some amount of money that got returned to the state and then was offered out, and we ended up picking up a few extra seats as part of that as well. So we've definitely had a strong voluntary pre-K program.
Is this
Right.
something that you think would be beneficial?
Oh, yes. So the research is clear about the benefits of early learning.
Right.
And so more and more access to quality childcare is an issue for many families because of the cost. It's more important for us to provide that. And
Right.
so that's the dilemma. It's seen as separate from K-12. We'll review it as pre-K-12 is really
Right.
the system. And so that's why it's not permanent
I'm
as K-12 funding.
hopeful we're getting close on it. I feel like we're kind of almost to the point we were what, 11 or 12 years ago when they fully funded all-day kindergarten. And that was a big thing when that happened. That was my youngest was, his kindergarten year was the first year of the full all-day, everyday kindergarten. So his kindergarten class was huge because everybody who was age eligible started kindergarten that fall. So, yeah. Hopefully we can get to that point with preschool programs. And I would imagine that would be something that if we're able to get more kids enrolled earlier, also could help our enrollment long-term. So it might have an added benefit.
Yeah. Only tangentially related, when my wife and I, our children were first born, or our oldest was first born, we visited a family who lived in Arkansas at the time.
Yeah.
And then, so this would have been 20 years ago, they had fully funded pre-K, or 4-year-old preschool
20 years ago.
20 years ago. And we remember thinking that just seemed like it made a lot of sense, and couldn't understand why it wasn't already happening in Minnesota, but.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think we're necessarily as progressive as we think we are sometimes on things like that, yes. A ways to go. So, what are we up to? Is that
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
lucky 7? Is there anything else you want to consider?
Is there a limit on how many we can?
Well, I mean, the way I'm looking at it is this: we're going to bring it to a
Yeah.
board workshop
And
and
then we like
could
whittle
potentially-
it down, maybe?
pare it down
Okay.
if we decide, or we might decide all of these are so important that we want to keep them. I think the risk if we have too many is if everything is a priority, then nothing's a priority. So we have to kind of
Yeah.
balance what are the most impactful, most critical things for our district for the next 12 months. So that might be the conversation to have in a workshop. But I think the 7 that we've outlined up to this point are all pretty high value for the district.
So remind me again, under our, because I know we have the mental health supports, our mental health under our platform. Does it include the like to add and hire additional support staff? Does it say anything about being able to hire additional support staff in that? Because I'm just looking, it does.
What it says in the actual platform is increasing the safe schools levy will allow school districts to hire staff to address those needs, meaning the mental health needs referred to earlier in this.
So we're following the MS, or the, whatever, the metropolitan one.
MSBA,
No, the metropolitan school districts.
AMSD.
Yeah.
I think we referenced
Took it from there?
AMSD and
Okay.
MSB when the 2022 platform was created.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I don't have anything else.
So I guess for next steps, we'll have something ready to be presented to the board at our workshop that is it the next meeting after this week?
So
Mid-November?
November and November, they're a week apart.
Oh, that's right. It's the second meeting,
And then the 17th.
second meeting in November?
Yeah, the 10th and the 17th, and I don't remember which one this agenda is, or this one's on.
I'm not, obviously not remembering it either,
Oh,
but I
well,
know it's on one of them.
I can look it up real
I
quick.
was going to do the
Yeah.
same. Oops.
It is November 10th.
It is the
Adjourn
10th.
to a workshop,
Okay.
discuss the 2023 legislative platform.
There you go. So we'll discuss it with the board at a workshop on November the 10th.
Okay.
Anything else for this evening?
No? Aaron?
No,
All right.
Hit the off-air button.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good
Give 'em a
evening.
minute.
Thank you.
Give 'em a minute. Thank you. And we'll change 2022 to 2023.
Yeah.
That was the other.